In today's world, where change is happening faster than ever, we still don't fully understand the impact of past events, decisions, or predictions that could reshape the way we view the future. 2025 is just around the corner, and with it comes a host of strange and mysterious prophecies from figures like Nostradamus and Baba Vanga. But are their predictions truly accurate? Could the future they describe be what we're about to face? Imagine a world where technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate, yet it's also filled with dangers we can't fully anticipate. Will we be ready to confront the new challenges, the decisions of global leaders, or will we fall victim to the same mistakes we made in the past? As we move forward into the coming years, with AI and other technological advancements pushing the limits of what we once thought possible, can we maintain the core values our societies have built over generations? The answer lies not only in these prophecies, but also in us, the ones living in the present, with the power to shape the future. In this video, we'll explore predictions for 2025, from Nostradamus and Baba Vanga's famous foresights to personal visions of what the future might hold. We'll take a look at groundbreaking technologies changing our world and the lessons history can teach us along the way. Join me as we expand our horizons and see if we can uncover the answers to the big questions about our near future. As we approach 2025, the future seems both exhilarating and daunting. Technological advancements are reshaping nearly every aspect of our daily lives. From artificial intelligence revolutionizing industries to breakthroughs in medicine offering hope for previously incurable diseases. At the same time, we are facing a world in flux. Climate change, geopolitical tensions, and economic instability threaten the fabric of global society. It's at this crossroads of innovation and uncertainty that we find ourselves grappling with questions that have been asked for centuries. What does the future hold? Can we predict what's coming? Or are we destined to be caught off guard by the twists and turns that await? These questions are not new, but they have become more pressing in an era where the rapid pace of change often feels overwhelming. Throughout history, there have been individuals who seem to have an uncanny ability to predict the future. Among the most famous are Nostradamus and Baba Vanga, two figures whose prophecies have intrigued and captivated people for centuries. Nostradamus, the 16th century French astrologer and physician, is perhaps best known for his cryptic quatrains, many of which seem to forecast major world events. Baba Vanga, a Bulgarian mystic who lived in the 20th century, gained notoriety for her predictions about the future, some of which appear to have come true in striking ways. But can we take their words seriously? Do their predictions hold any real weight? Or are they simply the product of vague statements and hindsight bias? As we explore their forecasts for 2025, it's essential to consider the context in which they were made. Nostradamus and Baba Vanga didn't have the technological tools we possess today. They relied on astrology, visions, and intuition to form their predictions, methods that seem distant from the data-driven, scientific approaches that shape our current understanding of the world. Yet, there's something about their prophecies that still resonates with people, even in the modern age. Nostradamus, for example, famously wrote that the great man will be struck down by lightning. For centuries, many have speculated that this refers to a major world leader meeting an untimely and dramatic end. Some even believe that it foretold the assassination of John F. Kennedy, while others point to figures like Abraham Lincoln or even more contemporary leaders. But what about the future? Does Nostradamus have something to say about 2025? Baba Vanga, who was blind but possessed an extraordinary gift of foresight, also made predictions that have captured public imagination. She is said to have predicted the rise of terrorism and the fall of the Twin Towers in 2001. But she also foresaw future events with a more ominous tone, including natural disasters, political upheaval, and economic collapse. Her followers claim that her insights are uncannily accurate, with some even attributing global events to her foresight. But can we really trust her visions of the future? As we turn our attention to 2025, we must ask ourselves, are we headed into a period of great upheaval? As these predictions suggest, will we see the rise of new leaders, groundbreaking technological advancements, or perhaps even cataclysmic events that will change the world as we know it? In addition to the predictions of Nostradamus and Baba Vanga, We must also consider the vast strides being made in the fields of technology and artificial intelligence. We are on the brink of creating machines that can think, learn, and even mimic human emotions. Could these advancements lead to a future where AI plays a dominant role in our lives, potentially altering the balance of power across the globe? Some futurists argue that by 2025, AI will be capable of solving some of the world's most pressing problems, from climate change to disease eradication. Others warn that the rise of AI could lead to job displacement on a massive scale, creating economic inequality and exacerbating existing social tensions. As we stand at the precipice of this new technological era, it's essential to consider not just the possibilities, but the potential dangers that lie ahead. The landscape of global politics is also evolving. In recent years, we've witnessed the rise of new political movements and the shifting of power between nations. China, Russia, and other emerging powers are challenging the dominance of the United States, while new alliances are forming in unexpected ways. As we look toward 2025, we must ask, will we see the emergence of a new world order? Or will tensions escalate into conflict? Will nations come together to solve shared global challenges? Or will they turn inward, retreating into nationalism and isolationism? This is where history becomes an invaluable guide. The lessons we've learned from past conflicts, revolutions, and technological revolutions can help us navigate the uncertainties of the future. But there's a catch. History doesn't always repeat itself in predictable patterns. The forces shaping our world today are unlike anything we've experienced before. The rapid pace of change, coupled with global interconnectivity, has created a world where a single event in one part of the world can have far-reaching consequences. As we set the scene for what lies ahead in 2025, we must ask ourselves, how will we respond to the challenges and opportunities that await us? Will we be passive bystanders, swept along by the currents of history, or will we take an active role in shaping the future? The choices we make in the coming years will have a profound impact on the world our children and grandchildren inherit. The stage is set for a period of transformation, both in terms of technology and geopolitics. But how will these forces intersect? What role will the predictions of Nostradamus and Baba Vanga play in shaping our perception of the future? As we dive deeper into these predictions and analyze their potential impact, it's essential to remember that the future is not predetermined. It is not etched in stone. It is shaped by the choices we make today. As we venture into 2025, the world is poised at a critical juncture. The decisions made in the next few years will set the course for generations to come. And the big question is, will we be ready for the challenges ahead? In the heart of 2025, the world had grown used to the rapidly evolving landscape, a world where advancements were no longer things of fiction but part of the fabric of daily life. Yet, amid all the technological breakthroughs, political shifts, and environmental concerns, one story was about to grip the attention of millions, exposing the hidden undercurrents of power, betrayal, and deception. Jaden was once a name synonymous with success. He had grown up in the public eye, raised in a world where the elite few controlled the strings of society's most important institutions. As a young man, Jaden had captivated the public with his brilliant mind, a seemingly impossible blend of creativity, intellect, and charisma. He was often regarded as one of the rising stars of the 21st century, a symbol of what the future could hold. Whether in technology, business, or politics, Jaden was present at every turning point. His influence spanned continents, and his reach knew no bounds. He was a shining example of the new era, one that blended the old ways with cutting-edge innovation, a man of the world, perhaps even a man of destiny. But as 2025 dawned, something happened, something shifted, and that shift began with Jaden himself. The first whispers began in the form of cryptic rumors. It was hard to say whether these were mere speculations, or if there was something far deeper at play. At first, these rumors seemed to carry no weight. People dismissed them as the product of conspiracy theorists or tabloid gossip. However, the whispers only grew louder, and soon they could no longer be ignored. Reports surfaced, accounts of people who had worked with Jaden for years, recounting strange incidents and unsettling behaviors. Longtime colleagues, who had once regarded him as a friend, began to share stories of his increasing isolation, his growing obsession with certain secretive projects, and his withdrawal from the public eye. For years, Jaden had been a part of exclusive, high-level meetings with world leaders, secretive think tanks, and private corporations. His influence had been the kind that shaped global policies and decisions behind closed doors. Those who had been closest to him began to realize that Jaden was not just a mere figurehead in the political and economic arenas. He was a part of something far more complex, far more dangerous. What began as a trickle of information soon became a full-blown flood of revelations. The most shocking came from a former associate, someone who had worked closely with Jaden for almost a decade. This associate, a disillusioned technologist named Chloe, had left the industry years ago, but when she saw the growing tide of whispers, she could no longer stay silent. She revealed a trove of information, encrypted documents, intercepted communications, and detailed accounts of covert operations Jaden had been involved in. Jaden had been involved in an underground network, a shadow world of power players who were shaping global events from the shadows. This network, which spanned countries and industries, had been manipulating everything from financial markets to political movements. Chloe's testimony uncovered a web of secrets so vast that it seemed impossible to comprehend. The influence Jaden had wielded was not just about business or politics. It was about control. Control over information, over people, over the very systems that govern society. It turned out that Jaden had been part of a covert initiative known as the Veil, a secretive group that believed in controlling information and steering the world's narrative from behind the scenes. The purpose of this initiative was not only to predict future events, but to ensure that the outcomes were shaped according to a select few vision of the future. This was not just about money or power. It was about an almost godlike control over the course of humanity's destiny. The Veil had access to the most advanced technologies in artificial intelligence, predictive algorithms, and data manipulation, allowing them to craft scenarios and engineer outcomes in ways most people could not even fathom. Jaden, it seemed, had been one of the leading figures in this covert initiative. He had been using his technological expertise and vast network to steer the course of geopolitical events, economic crises, and even social movements. His ability to predict outcomes, and more disturbingly, to influence them, had made him a key player in the global power structure. But as Chloe's revelations continued to surface, another layer of the truth emerged. It wasn't just Jaden's involvement in the Veil that was shocking, it was the deeper, more personal elements that were being uncovered. Behind the scenes, Jaden had been living a double life, one that no one could have imagined. He had been involved in high-stakes manipulation of not only markets and governments, but also people, real, human lives. Jaden's personal relationships began to unravel as well. Longtime friends and family members spoke out, recounting how Jaden had become increasingly distant, almost as if he had been living in a different reality. His obsession with the Veil had consumed him, pushing him into a world where loyalty and morality no longer held meaning. He had used his influence to manipulate individuals and events for personal gain, leaving a trail of broken alliances and tarnished reputations behind him. The truth was that Jaden had become a puppet master, pulling strings in ways that most people could never understand. He had used his intelligence, his connections, and his power to bend the world to his will. And now, with Chloe's testimony and the ensuing investigations, the facade was starting to crack. The shockwaves of these revelations rippled through society. People who had once admired Jaden now turned against him, questioning everything they had believed about him. Was he just a genius, a visionary who had been misunderstood? Or was he a villain, a manipulator whose ambition had led him down a dark and dangerous path? As the world tried to make sense of the truth behind Jaden's actions, it became clear that the unraveling of these secrets would have far-reaching consequences. This wasn't just about one man's fall from grace. It was about the unraveling of a system, a power structure that had shaped the world for decades. The Veil, which Jaden had been a part of, was not just an isolated group. It was a part of a larger, more complex network of control. And as more and more people began to speak out, the full extent of the manipulation and deceit began to come into focus. What was most terrifying was that, even as the truth came to light, there were still questions that remained unanswered. How far did the reach of the veil extend? Were there other powerful figures, like Jaden, pulling the strings behind the scenes? And perhaps most chilling of all, what had Jaden seen in his pursuit of power? What future had he been attempting to create? And was it too late to stop it? As Jaden's truth unraveled, it became clear that the stakes were higher than anyone had imagined. The future, as it turned out, was not just something that would unfold on its own. It was something that could be shaped, controlled, and manipulated. And those who held the power to do so were not always who they appeared to be. As 2025 unfolded, the world would have to confront not only the shocking truths about Jaden, but also the unsettling reality that the systems that governed society were far from as transparent as they seemed. Jaden's truth was just the beginning, and the world was watching, wondering what would come next. What secrets still lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? As the world continues to change at an unprecedented pace, it's easy to feel like a mere observer of history rather than an active participant. The stories of power struggles, hidden truths, and untold secrets, such as the one involving Jaden, are often seen as dramatic narratives or even the plot lines of dystopian thrillers. However, the more we reflect on these stories, the more we realize that they are not as distant from our own realities as we might wish to believe. The story of Jaden, a man who once represented the pinnacle of success and influence, is one that feels disturbingly familiar. It's a reminder of the age-old truth that power, when left unchecked, can corrupt even the most well-intentioned individuals. And it forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. How much of the world we live in is shaped by people like Jaden, who, whether intentionally or not, pull the strings behind the scenes? This reflection takes us to the core of a much larger question. What does it mean to hold power? And how should we navigate the responsibility that comes with it? Power and influence in the modern world. In today's interconnected world, the lines between public figures and those pulling the strings behind the curtain are becoming increasingly blurred. As we witnessed with Jaden, the truth is often more complex and unsettling than what meets the eye. The rise of social media, the influence of massive corporations, and the growing control of a select few over global markets mean that power is no longer confined to the traditional figures of authority, like political leaders or monarchs. Power is now decentralized but concentrated in ways we may not even recognize. Take, for example, the rise of Silicon Valley in the past 2 decades. Technology companies, led by figures like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos, have gained an almost godlike influence over the way we live, work, and communicate. These tech giants have revolutionized entire industries, but they have also been at the heart of debates about surveillance, data privacy, and the ethics of AI. Much like Jaden, these individuals and their companies have made decisions that impact billions of lives, often without public scrutiny or accountability. Their actions, whether for better or worse, ripple through every aspect of society. From data-driven algorithms shaping our online experiences to the automation of jobs that once provided livelihood for millions, these decisions have far-reaching consequences. Yet, how many of us are truly aware of the power these individuals hold? How many of us stop to think about the unseen hands that are constantly shaping the course of our lives? I remember a time when I, like many others, believed that the world was largely governed by visible institutions, governments, corporations, and other large organizations. But over time, I began to realize that much of what shapes the modern world happens behind the scenes. For instance, when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in 2020, it felt as though the world was at the mercy of a crisis that was beyond our control. But as we learned more, we discovered that the response to the pandemic, from vaccine development to the distribution of aid, was shaped by a handful of global organizations and leaders. These figures made decisions that directly impacted our daily lives. Decisions that were based not only on health data, but also on economic considerations, political agendas, and social dynamics. Looking back, I cannot help but reflect on the role I played in all of this. Like many people, I followed the news, shared my opinions, and took part in online discussions. Yet, I had no idea who the real players were in the game. Who were the people whose decisions would ultimately determine the fate of millions? It was a sobering realization, one that echoed the revelations about Jaden and his hidden influence on the world. Real-life examples of manipulation and influence. While Jaden's story may seem like a fictional account of a man who was seduced by power, there are numerous examples from real life where individuals and organizations have manipulated situations to their advantage, often at the expense of others. Take the case of the 2008 financial crisis. For instance, in the years leading up to the crash, banks and financial institutions engaged in risky and unethical practices that led to widespread economic devastation. The crisis was triggered by the collapse of the housing bubble, but the seeds of the disaster were sown long before that. Financial leaders, many of whom were well-connected, used their influence to promote risky mortgage-backed securities and manipulated the market for personal gain. What's striking about the 2008 crisis is that, just like with Jaden, it wasn't a single event, but the result of a complex web of influence. Behind the scenes, financial institutions worked closely with government officials, regulators, and economists, each with their own interests in mind, while ordinary people suffered from job losses, foreclosures, and ruined savings. The architects of the crisis largely walked away unscathed, their wealth and power intact. This story, while years old, is still deeply relevant today, especially as we see the concentration of wealth and power continuing to grow in the hands of a few. It's a story about manipulation, greed, and the unchecked pursuit of control, one that resonates with the events surrounding Jaden. Another example that comes to mind is the rise of social media influencers. These individuals have become the new gatekeepers of culture, dictating trends, opinions, and even political beliefs. While many of these influencers may appear to be nothing more than social media personalities, their influence is anything but trivial. They control what millions of people see, buy, and believe, often without any form of accountability. The algorithms behind platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube reward certain behaviors, pushing content that is designed to attract attention, provoke emotion, and drive engagement. But behind the glossy facades of influencer culture lies a darker side. Many of these influencers are not simply sharing their lives with their followers. They are often promoting products, lifestyles, and ideologies that are backed by corporate interests. They are part of a carefully orchestrated marketing machine that benefits from the very manipulation they claim to oppose. The lines between authenticity and advertisement have become increasingly blurred, and the influence that these individuals hold over their followers is something that few truly understand. The responsibility of power. Reflecting on these examples, it becomes clear that power, whether in the hands of a single individual like Jaden or a collective entity like a tech company, carries with it a heavy responsibility. The decisions made by those in positions of power reverberate far beyond their immediate circle. As we've seen with Jaden, the impact of his actions was not confined to the boardroom or the halls of government. It reached into the lives of everyday people, shaping their futures in ways they couldn't possibly have foreseen. But what does this mean for us as individuals? How do we navigate a world where so much of what happens is beyond our control? One thing I've learned is that the answer doesn't lie in simply accepting the status quo. Instead, it lies in becoming more conscious of the power structures that influence our lives and actively participating in shaping them, whether it's through voting, activism, or simply being more informed about the choices we make as consumers. We all have a role to play in ensuring that power is used responsibly. For me, the lesson is clear. We cannot afford to remain passive observers. We must take ownership of our future, recognize the forces at play, and be willing to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult, even when the truth is uncomfortable. It's not enough to point fingers at the Jadens of the world. We must also look inward and ask ourselves how we are complicit in the systems that perpetuate inequality and manipulation. The world is not shaped by a few powerful individuals alone. It is shaped by all of us, in ways large and small. Jaden's story is a wake-up call, a reminder that power must be wielded with responsibility, and that those who hold it must be held accountable. It's a call for all of us to reflect on our own roles in this system and to ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to create? In our increasingly complex world, where power and influence often shape the narratives of our lives, there is a growing need to reflect on the deeper, more human aspects of existence, qualities such as vulnerability and courage. These two virtues, though seemingly in opposition to the more traditional traits of power and control, have the potential to revolutionize how we engage with the world and how we navigate our personal and collective journeys. While stories like Jaden's reveal the darker side of ambition, manipulation, and hidden truths, the lessons we can draw from them also highlight the transformative power of embracing vulnerability and acting with courage. At first glance, vulnerability might seem like a weakness. After all, in a society that often values strength, control, and success, showing any sign of vulnerability can feel like an invitation for others to take advantage of us. But as we delve deeper into real-life examples and personal experiences, it becomes clear that vulnerability is, in fact, one of the most powerful tools we have for connection, growth, and healing. It is through vulnerability that we access our most authentic selves and connect with others on a level that transcends superficial differences. Courage, too, is a virtue that has been misunderstood. Too often, we associate courage with physical bravery or heroic acts. However, true courage often manifests in more subtle ways, such as the courage to speak up when we know it might be uncomfortable, the courage to admit when we are wrong, and, perhaps most importantly, the courage to be vulnerable in front of others. When we consider these two qualities in light of real-life stories, it becomes apparent that they are not just abstract ideals. They are the very forces that drive personal transformation and societal change. Let's explore how vulnerability and courage have played pivotal roles in some of the most significant moments in recent history. The power of vulnerability in public life. One of the most striking examples of vulnerability in the public eye is the story of Brené Brown, a research professor at the University of Houston and a leading expert on vulnerability, courage, and empathy. In her TED Talk, which has become one of the most viewed talks of all time, Brown shares her journey of discovering the power of vulnerability. For years, she was consumed by the belief that vulnerability was a sign of weakness. She thought that being vulnerable would expose her to judgment and rejection. However, her research revealed the opposite. Vulnerability is essential to human connection and to living a full, meaningful life. Brown's work has had a profound impact on how we think about vulnerability, especially in leadership and personal growth. She argues that it is only when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, when we embrace the uncertainty and risk of showing our true selves, that we open the door to creativity, innovation, and deep, authentic connections. Vulnerability, rather than being a source of shame or fear, becomes a source of strength and resilience. Take, for instance, the courageous acts of public figures who have chosen to be vulnerable in the face of adversity. When Oprah Winfrey spoke publicly about the abuse she suffered as a child, she was not only confronting her past, but also setting an example for others who had experienced similar trauma. Her vulnerability allowed others to feel seen and heard, breaking the silence around issues of abuse and mental health. Oprah's courage in sharing her story helped to normalize vulnerability, creating space for healing and conversation in ways that would not have been possible otherwise. Another example of vulnerability in the public sphere comes from the story of Malala Yousafzai. After surviving an assassination attempt by the Taliban for advocating girls' education, Malala could have easily hidden from the world, protecting herself from further harm. Instead, she chose to share her story and continue advocating for education rights for girls worldwide. By doing so, Malala exposed herself to the possibility of further danger. But her vulnerability became a powerful force for change. Her courage in speaking out, despite the risks, inspired millions and gave a voice to those who had been silenced by oppression. The courage to act in the face of injustice. Courage, as we know, is not just about standing up for ourselves, but also about standing up for others. One of the most powerful real-life examples of courage is found in the civil rights movement in the United States. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and John Lewis demonstrated extraordinary courage in their fight for racial equality, often at great personal cost. Rosa Parks' decision to remain seated on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1955 became a symbol of defiance against racial segregation. What is often overlooked in this story is that Park's act of courage was not just a spur-of-the-moment decision, but the result of years of activism and preparation. Parks was a member of the NAACP and had been involved in the fight for civil rights long before that fateful day. Her act of courage, though seemingly simple, was a deliberate and calculated move in a larger strategy for social change. Similarly, the courage shown by Dr. King in leading the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and organizing peaceful protests in the face of violent opposition was nothing short of remarkable. His commitment to nonviolence and his unwavering belief in the power of love to overcome hate continue to inspire generations of activists and ordinary citizens alike. These examples of courage in the face of injustice highlight the transformative power of standing up for what is right, even when the odds seem insurmountable. The lessons we can learn from these leaders are not just about the importance of courage, but also about the power of standing together, supporting one another, and never giving up, even in the face of adversity. Vulnerability and courage in personal growth. While public figures often provide powerful examples of vulnerability and courage, these qualities are equally important in our personal lives. The lessons we can learn from real life are not just about grand gestures or moments of fame. They are about the everyday choices we make to show up authentically and face our fears. Consider, for example, the story of someone overcoming addiction. The journey of recovery is one that requires immense vulnerability, the willingness to admit that we are not in control, that we need help, and that we are not defined by our past mistakes. It takes courage to face the deep-rooted fears and emotional pain that often drive addiction. It also takes courage to seek help, to open up to others, and to be vulnerable in the face of judgment or shame. The same can be said for those who struggle with mental health challenges. The act of seeking therapy or sharing our struggles with friends and family requires vulnerability, especially in a society that often stigmatizes mental health issues. But it is through these acts of vulnerability that we create the conditions for healing. It is only by confronting our fears, our insecurities, and our deepest wounds that we can begin to heal and grow. One personal story that stands out to me is that of a close friend who, after years of suffering in silence, decided to open up about their mental health struggles. For years, they had kept their depression and anxiety hidden, fearing judgment and rejection. But when they finally took the step to share their story, they were met with support and understanding from the people around them. Their vulnerability not only helped them heal, but also allowed others to feel less alone in their struggles. By sharing their truth, they created a space for others to do the same. And together, they built a community of support and strength. The role of vulnerability and courage in building stronger communities. Ultimately, vulnerability and courage are not just about individual transformation. They are about creating stronger, more connected communities. When we embrace vulnerability, we foster empathy and understanding. We allow others to see us for who we truly are. And in doing so, we invite them to share their own stories, creating a culture of openness and support. Courage, on the other hand, enables us to act collectively in the face of injustice, inequality, and suffering. It is the driving force behind social change, the spark that ignites movements and inspires action. Without courage, we would remain passive bystanders, too afraid to challenge the status quo or fight for what is right. With courage, we have the power to shape the world around us, to stand up for others, and to create a future that reflects our highest ideals. In a world that often values power and success above all else, the lessons of vulnerability and courage remind us of the true strength that lies within each of us. It is through vulnerability that we connect, heal, and grow. It is through courage that we challenge the forces that seek to divide us and stand up for a more just, compassionate world. The lessons we can learn from real life, whether from the courage of civil rights leaders, the vulnerability of public figures like Oprah and Malala, or the everyday acts of bravery that shape our personal lives, remind us that the greatest transformations begin not with grand gestures of power, but with the quiet, courageous decision to show up as our true selves, vulnerable and whole. Jaden's story, while deeply personal, taps into larger, more widespread societal issues that resonate with millions. In 2025, Our world is increasingly defined by the ways in which we search for meaning, identity, and connection, whether through advancements in technology, shifts in social dynamics, or the growing trend of self-awareness and emotional healing. The narrative of Jaden's confrontation in the courtroom speaks to the universal human need for understanding and reconciliation. The quest for identity in 2025, a world more connected, yet more divided. In today's digital age, one of the most profound trends is the growing quest for identity. As people worldwide continue to explore their family histories, DNA testing services have seen exponential growth. Tools like 23andMe and Ancestry.com are not just uncovering ancestral roots, but also offering people the chance to uncover long-lost family members. While this technology offers a sense of empowerment, it also raises deeper questions about what it means to truly know who you are. Jaden's story, with its explosive revelation in the courtroom, mirrors this search for identity on a personal, emotional level. In 2025, more and more individuals are realizing that understanding their past, whether it's learning about their biological parents or uncovering a family history, can be a transformative experience. The emotional weight of knowing where we come from, understanding our roots, and making peace with past choices is now more tangible than ever. But this pursuit is not always smooth. It often reveals uncomfortable truths about abandonment, rejection, and emotional trauma, exactly what Jaden is confronting in that courtroom. His plea, "You're my mom," echoes the thousands of individuals who, despite all their technological advancements, still yearn to piece together the missing parts of their personal histories. The complex, often painful nature of uncovering one's origins is becoming a central theme in our society. In a world where family structures are often fragmented, and the search for biological parents has become a trending pursuit, stories like Jaden's remind us that identity isn't just about knowing who you are, it's about reconciling with the emotional scars and connections that shape your journey. Foster care system, children lost in the system. One of the most important aspects of Jaden's story is his connection to the foster care system. As much as we've made progress in social systems, there's still a deep, systemic issue that plagues children who are abandoned, neglected, or lost in the bureaucracy of foster care. In 2025, the foster care system is in desperate need of reform. Statistics indicate that the number of children in foster care continues to rise, with many of them aging out of the system without ever knowing the love and stability of a permanent family. This leaves them vulnerable, emotionally and socially, as they struggle to piece together a sense of self-worth and purpose. Jaden's story highlights the painful consequences of a system that often fails to nurture children's emotional needs. Jaden's need to confront the judge and demand answers about his past is emblematic of the hundreds of thousands of children who grow up in foster care, unsure of their origins and desperate for connection. These children, much like Jaden, are often lost to the world, their stories untold and their voices unheard. This isn't just about one boy facing a judge. It's a reflection of the broader crisis that exists within foster care systems globally. This system, which is supposed to offer protection and care, often inadvertently becomes a place of trauma. Children are shuffled from home to home, losing their sense of permanence and stability. The emotional damage done to children in such circumstances is profound and lasting. When they eventually age out of the system, many face difficulties adjusting to adulthood, including struggles with identity, relationships, and mental health. Jaden's plea is not just a cry for his own answers. It's a cry for all those who have been abandoned and left to navigate the complexities of their past alone. The rise of mental health awareness, the need for healing. Jaden's story brings to the forefront the emotional and psychological toll of abandonment and neglect. In 2025, mental health awareness is at an all-time high, yet the stigma surrounding mental health struggles remains pervasive, especially when it comes to children. The trauma Jaden has experienced, being rejected and cast aside by his own mother, speaks to the pain of a much larger issue: the lasting effects of childhood trauma on mental health. In recent years, we've seen a surge in the acknowledgement of mental health as a critical part of overall well-being. People, especially younger generations, are becoming more open about discussing their struggles with anxiety, depression, and past trauma. However, It's crucial to understand that the effects of early childhood trauma, especially abandonment, can linger long into adulthood. Jaden's emotional breakdown in the courtroom is a powerful reminder of the deep psychological wounds that can be caused by rejection. It's not just about a legal case, it's about a soul searching for its identity, for validation, and for love. The growing understanding of mental health in 2025 highlights the importance of addressing the emotional needs of children in difficult situations. As a society, we must recognize that mental health support needs to be incorporated into systems of care, whether it's the foster care system, schools, or even the justice system. Jaden's confrontation with the judge is a wake-up call that we can no longer afford to ignore the deep psychological scars of children who have suffered abandonment and neglect. Race, class, and privilege, the intersection of identity and societal systems. Jaden's story also touches on the intersectionality of race, class, and privilege in modern society. As a young black boy in a courtroom filled with wealth and authority, Jaden's experience is one that many children of color face, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. The legal and social systems, often influenced by privilege and power, can fail these children, leaving them without the resources, support, and opportunities they need to succeed. In 2025, the conversation around race and privilege is at a crucial point. Movements advocating for racial justice and equality continue to push for systemic change, but the work is far from done. Jaden's plea for recognition is symbolic of the larger struggle many marginalized communities face when navigating systems that were not designed with their needs in mind. The legal system, in particular, often fails to serve those without privilege, and the emotional toll of living in a world that sees you as less than can be devastating. Jaden's emotional moment in the courtroom forces us to ask tough questions about our justice system and the societal structures that perpetuate inequality. Are we truly listening to the voices of those who have been silenced for so long? Are we doing enough to ensure that children like Jaden don't fall through the cracks of a system that is supposed to protect them? These questions are more pressing than ever in 2025, a year that continues to challenge us to address systemic issues of race, privilege, and inequality. The global impact of Jaden's story, a call for collective responsibility. In the global context, Jaden's story transcends borders. While it's easy to see this as a personal, isolated case, the underlying themes are universal. Across the world, there are children who feel abandoned, neglected, and disconnected from their roots. There are millions of children in foster care systems, orphanages, and group homes who need to know they are loved and valued. And there are countless adults, like Rebecca Hart, who must face the consequences of their past actions, whether or not they are ready. In 2025, the global community is being called to recognize the emotional and psychological needs of vulnerable children. We can no longer ignore the deep social inequities that lead to family separations, abandonment, and trauma. Stories like Jaden's urge us to do better by our children, to offer them the care, protection, and love they deserve. But they also challenge us to reflect on the ways in which we all carry our pasts, and how we can do better in healing and reconciling the painful truths that shape our world. As we come to the end of Jaden's story, it's impossible to ignore the powerful impact of that one moment in the courtroom. When Jaden spoke those simple yet profound words, "You're my mom," the room fell into stunned silence, not because the truth was shocking, but because it was a truth that so many of us have buried deep within ourselves: the yearning for connection, understanding, and healing. In that one sentence, Jaden forced not only the judge, but all of us, to confront the complexities of identity, family, and the emotional wounds we carry from the past. But Jaden's story doesn't end in that courtroom. It continues with us, each one of us who has ever faced abandonment, who has ever wondered about our origins, or who has struggled to reconcile with our past choices. It's a story that transcends race, class, and geography, reminding us that we are all connected by our shared humanity, our collective struggles, and our shared need for love and acceptance. In the whirlwind of our daily lives, it's easy to overlook these deeply personal and emotional moments. We often get caught up in the hustle of success, the rush of digital connectivity, or the distractions that keep us from confronting the raw and real parts of ourselves. But Jaden's plea reminds us that we cannot truly move forward in life without first acknowledging where we come from. We cannot fully heal until we face the emotional truths that haunt us. And we cannot find peace until we are willing to forgive both others and ourselves. The power of speaking your truth. Jaden's courage to speak his truth in that courtroom, to stand in the face of rejection and claim what was rightfully his, is something we can all learn from. So often, we shy away from confronting the painful aspects of our lives, whether it's the scars of childhood trauma, past mistakes, or unspoken grievances. Many of us hold back from truly expressing what lies deep inside. We are afraid of rejection, afraid of what others might think, or simply afraid of facing the pain that might come with speaking our truth. But Jaden's example shows us that truth is a powerful tool. It can break down walls of misunderstanding and create a path to healing. The truth doesn't always come in a neat, polished package. It can be messy, uncomfortable, and raw. But it is in these moments of vulnerability that we find our strength. When we are brave enough to speak our truth, we open the door for others to do the same. We create a space where healing can begin, where forgiveness can flourish, and where real change can take place. So, ask yourself, what truths have you been avoiding? What part of your past do you need to confront to move forward? Jaden's story challenges us all to reflect on these questions and encourages us to take the first step towards healing by speaking our own truths, no matter how difficult it may seem. The importance of forgiveness and reconciliation. At the heart of Jaden's confrontation with Judge Rebecca Hart is the theme of forgiveness. Despite the years of abandonment and rejection, Jaden chooses to speak out, not out of anger, but from a place of deep need for understanding and reconciliation. He doesn't just want answers, he wants connection. He wants to know why he was abandoned, and he wants to heal the emotional wounds that have festered for so long. Forgiveness is a powerful force, but it is not always easy. Whether it's forgiving someone else or forgiving ourselves, it requires vulnerability, compassion, and a willingness to release the pain of the past. In 2025, with mental health awareness at an all-time high, we are starting to realize that forgiveness is not just for the other person. It is for our own peace of mind. It's about letting go of the emotional burdens that weigh us down and allowing ourselves to move forward with grace and dignity. Rebecca Hart, the judge, is also faced with her own moment of reckoning. As the truth of her past is revealed, she must confront the decisions she made years ago. Her story reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It always finds a way to resurface. And when it does, it forces us to ask ourselves, are we ready to face the consequences of our actions? Are we willing to take responsibility for the hurt we may have caused, even unintentionally? Both Jaden and Rebecca's journeys are a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness. It's a reminder that no matter how much time has passed, it's never too late to seek reconciliation, to repair broken relationships, to mend emotional wounds, and to build a future that is rooted in understanding and compassion. A call for change in our systems. While Jaden's emotional plea and Rebecca's painful confrontation are deeply personal, they also highlight a systemic issue that cannot be ignored: the way we treat children in foster care and the emotional toll of abandonment. The foster care system, despite the best intentions of many who work within it, continues to fail children like Jaden. Too often, children grow up without knowing their origins, without the stability of a permanent family, and without the emotional care they need to thrive. In 2025, we must ask ourselves, how can we do better? How can we create systems that support vulnerable children, ensuring they are not just physically cared for, but emotionally nurtured as well? How can we provide answers to the children who are seeking them, so that they do not grow up with the same feelings of rejection and abandonment that Jaden faced? This is not just a call for reform within the foster care system. It's a call for compassion, for empathy, and for a collective responsibility to take care of our most vulnerable. The story of Jaden is a reminder that each child deserves to know their worth, to feel loved, and to have a sense of belonging. As a society, we must prioritize these emotional needs just as much as we prioritize physical care. Only then can we break the cycle of trauma and give children the future they deserve. An invitation to reflect and take action. As we reflect on Jaden's emotional journey, we are reminded that our own stories are still unfolding. We all have moments in our lives when the truth must be confronted, when the pain of the past demands to be acknowledged, and when we must choose healing over avoidance. We can take inspiration from Jaden's courage, from his willingness to face the truth, and from his desire for connection. But we must also remember that change doesn't just happen in isolated moments. It happens when we collectively commit to living with more honesty, vulnerability, and compassion. So, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on your own life. Are there past wounds that need healing? Are there truths that need to be spoken? Are there relationships that need mending? Just as Jaden's story teaches us the power of confronting our past, it also challenges us to take action in our own lives. If Jaden's journey resonated with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's create a space for open, honest dialogue about the power of vulnerability, forgiveness, and healing. And, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel for more videos that dive into these complex human stories. Your support helps us keep these important conversations going. Together, we can build a community where we don't shy away from our pasts, but embrace them as a way to shape a better, more compassionate future. So, take that first step, speak your truth, heal your wounds, and let's continue this journey of understanding and growth together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jaden's emotional confrontation and how we can all contribute to healing and reconciliation in our own lives.